Jeg vil gjerne by Einar Flydal velkommen opp hit, og håper at vi får masse nødvendig og godt å høre. Nå skal jeg tenne din mikrofon, så håper jeg du kan bruke den.
Takk,
Vær så god.
Takk skal du ha. Well, I have been instructed to present this in English.
I hope everybody understands.
But I could do that in Norwegian. That would depend on what you prefer. In English? In English? Okay. The points are in English. And luckily we had some computer problems, of course, with conversion problems and so on. So I will have to turn my head to the screen a few times to see what I'm actually talking about. Okay. I won't read the title of this brief lecture because it's so long, it will take half of the time. But I guess you have already read it. Well, the right question, in my view, is not about science. I discovered after more than 30 years working with ICT that there was a big debacle going on. Everybody could agree that radiation hurts by heating, but the problem was whether it also hurts at lower intensity levels. And, well, as I was about to retire, I decided to dig into the question. And so I started with, of course, what all academics do. What does science say? And I've been working full-time with that since, or more than full-time, says my wife, since 2010. Actually, that wasn't so difficult. The answer was very clearly yes. But the debacle was still there. And everybody, the ones who said yes could also tell that it was caused not only by intensity or by heating, but also by pulses, very weak pulses, as the ones we can see up here to the somewhere to the right, which are indeed very weak. They come from smart meters in this picture. And they are extremely short. We are talking about a few milliseconds, each of them. So, then the problem became another one. Why? How come that they are discussing so fastly, if science is so clear about this? And my perspective on this now is the one of a business analyst. The exposure limits in the Nordic countries are irrelevant for daily situations. If you are not working with the building of antennas and so on, and are very, very close to the base stations. They were established to protect against acute damage from heating around 1955 in the American Marine. And they do so. And the measuring stick is mean energy transfer to body. That means how much energy is actually coming to your body. And here we have the actual graph of the exposure limits. The Nordic countries, we are at the top right, together with the USA and 22 other states, about 22 others. And the principle for setting that limit is how much energy, as a mean over 6 minutes, could your body receive without getting heated. In other parts of the world, either they have no regulation at all, or they have what we see to the right here, the lower right. They are set according to how much energy you can take before one can measure biological damage, which are biological impact. And the recommendations from environmental medicine and bio researchers is what you see in the down left-hand corner. There is about a difference of 7 million times from these levels down here up to what we have in our country, in the Nordic countries. About. That is about, roughly speaking, 7 million times higher than the trigger level for cell stress. So, then the problem becomes, this gap, business-wise speaking, the problem is this gap from, I can't see the red light here. Yeah, it's so small. Okay, the problem is the gap from down here and up to the top here, the cameras, should that be unexploited? Should it be a wasteland, business-wise? Or should it be exploited for business, for warfare, and for welfare development? Of course, there is a fortune, a tremendous fortune here. This is a big West to conquer. So, of course, it will be a strife around the use of that gap. And, of course, someone would like to define the limits at very high up. Okay, and you listen to the ones that have the views that suit you. That's quite normal. Okay, so why are the Nordic radiation authorities denying the scientific findings? That is the next problem. To try to find an answer, we have to look at the delivery chain. Who is delivering what to whom? In the left-hand down corner, we have ICNIRP, the International Commission of Non-Ionizing Radiation Protection, which is a non-transparent private foundation that makes standards. It produces standards or guidelines and proposes it to the world and for the world to use. Then, and it delivers them to anyone who would like to have to use them. And in the WHO, the World Health Organization, there is a small project group, mainly as far as I found, consisting of one antenna specialist and her secretary, who are running the project, the International EMF project. That was set up by the founder of ICNIRP in 1996. And it promotes global radiation protection standards, which is, of course, a very legitimate thing to promote. So its deliverance to the world is global radiation protection standards promotion, and what it takes to do that. And among others, it delivers them to the Nordic radiation protection authorities, who then in turn set the national exposure limits. And both ICNIRP and the International EMF project recommend that countries and employers and producers and so on should review the knowledge from time to time to see whether these limits should be adjusted, up or down. And that is then done by expert groups. Okay, so what has happened in the Nordic countries over some years is that the Nordic radiation protection has been outsourced. It's simply outsourced to ICNIRP and the International EMF project. And the wording, we follow ICNIRP and WHO, is a political quality guarantee. It works as a political quality guarantee and assurance, and of course a way of transferring the responsibility to WHO. And also EU imposes regulations, and EU also bases bases these regulations on the WHO, as we shall see in short. Of course, this has the advantage that it saves resources, it avoids double work around in countries, and it also saves responsibility. But it also has a significant impact on public health. We can also interpret the structure, as we shall see, as a bulwark for the thermal paradigm, as it is called, this idea or this dogma that heating is all you have to protect for. Okay, let us look at step one in the delivery chain, that's ICNEP, which delivers a method for identifying protected exposure limits, and an expert network, and a formation into a way of thought. And it also delivers criteria for assessment of resource findings. So, it makes guidelines, but these guidelines are just to protect against acute damage from heating, nothing more. That is stated very clearly. Which means that this kind of pattern that we have from the smart meters, by definition, cannot harm, because here there is no heating. These pulses are much too small to create any heating at all, and much too short. And heating is measured as a mean over some minutes, and these pulses, even if they should be very strong, are so short that the mean is practically not changed at all. The mean value, the mean energy is very, very low. Okay, so this can't possibly harm, and that is what they say as well. Then ICNIP members and experts, they all adhere to this thermal paradigm. You don't get you don't become an expert, an ICNIP expert or an ICNIP member unless you do. No one has ever been elected to become an expert member who has not adhered to the thermal paradigm. Also, ICNIP relates to humans only, and we have the characteristic that we live for quite many years, almost 100, while insects, for example, live maybe just a few weeks. So, their metabolism is much, much faster. So changes in the for example, in the DNA, will be shown much, much faster. So by choosing humans, you are sure that the eventual damage will show up fairly slowly. Okay, that excludes this kind of situation. It's a tree from one city in Germany where 700 trees were controlled. This one has a base station at, you can guess which side. It has become brown in August, early August. And this is just one sample of several of the trees that were mapped in this city. Okay, but that is looked away from. They also use highly simplified models based on mean heat distribution and uptake. For example, yeah, we shall see that in a second, I hope. And they leave other mechanisms to governments and employers to assess if they can be proven, which means that if you don't accept the thermal paradigm, you have to prove it. It's not they who have to prove that they are right. Okay. They also set the demands for evidence very, very high, which is not in line with the precautionary principle. Føre-var-principle. Okay. This was a strategy which was developed in the 1960s to counter environmentalist claims in the USA. Particularly, it was the time when risk analysis was evolved as a mathematical discipline in order to bury it all in science. So it became so complicated to prove that there was a problem that no regulations would be made. Okay, so what ICNIRP here delivers is in fact a radiation hygiene thinking, traditional radiation hygiene thinking, and max room for action for industry. Okay, I missed one picture there, but it will come later, the one about simplified models. Step 2 then. So, ICNIRP transfers the task of finding out whether there is a problem with other mechanisms or not to the International EMF project. And the International EMF project argues for global radiation protection standards. It makes ready-made texts, law texts, and guiding for assessment of research findings. It creates also, it maintains a network of experts, and it argues that one should carry out knowledge reviews, and it makes quite a few small knowledge reviews himself. In particularly, we will come back to one. So, it is 50% industry financed, and the task when the project was set up was to review if there were other mechanisms of damage other than heating. And it said no, there were none, which created first protests. It also is at conflict with the Cancer Institute, and, but it concludes anyhow that there is no mechanism, no risk. Okay, it delivers these packages, ready-made brochures with models and law, which builds loyalty to the ICNIRP mindset. So that if you encounter one of these victims of EHS, they can't understand it, because the radiation is far too weak. Neither can they understand why birds can get problems. Okay, the expert reviews. Here, I'll take as an example 5 expert reviews which have been particularly and are particularly important in the Nordic countries. And we will look on the manning. Of course, they all came to the conclusion that there are no findings below thermal threshold which are sufficiently proven to change the present regulations. Here we have the manning, and here in the left-hand column, we have the first task group in the core task in the International EMF project. It only consists of ICNIRP members plus 2. That created so much protest that they enlarged the group. With whom? ICNIRP members. That's the second column. Then we have the EU SKINIA report for 2015, which paved the way for 5G in Europe. What does that consist of? ICNIRP members, plus 3. And then we have the Scientific Council of Sweden, which is of high importance with their reports every second year for all Nordic countries and many others. What does that consist of? ICNIRP members, plus 3, plus 2. And then we have the Norwegian report, which is important at least in Norway and perhaps in the rest of Scandinavia. 3 central ICNIRP members plus 13 which were not important members of the committee. So, and all these reports have been fiercely criticized, the world over, most of them, for being unbalanced, scientifically weak, violation of quality procedures, having conscious omissions of important scientific findings, of misinterpretations, and of industry bias. I have two small files more. Okay. So what is happening here is that this is just a ritual to solidify the dogma. And the framework also, which they have here, which they teach by these packages, determines the conclusion. I will not go into that. This is taken from an Australian, David Mercer, 2016, who shows how the framework is contradictory contradictory and looks like tailored for filibuster tactics, for delaying and delaying and delaying regulations. And it will always lose, biological findings will always lose out to this kind of very simplistic abstractions that are used when measuring, for example, the connection between heat and temperature rise. Here, where the body is looked upon as just a liquid, not as an electric system, a complex electric system. Okay, so what happens in the Nordic radiation protection authorities is that everything has been outsourced. No reality check is done. Microwave communication is actually defined away, so it is not a task. If you look on what they have as tasks, microwave radiation is not there in Norway, not in Denmark, as far as I understand, not in Iceland, and hardly in Finland. So, and they just cut and paste from WHO brochures, not from science. And even I discovered to my big surprise that I have more, myself, one single private person, more capacity than Denmark, Iceland, and Norway together. Together. What they have in Sweden and Finland I haven't discovered yet. Maybe I have more capacity than them as well. So actually they are just confused and squeezed rubber stamp offices. And which come out with, because they understand that something is wrong, they come out with advices which are contradictory. So this is a big responsibility disclaimer machine, as you have already seen it. They are all pushing the responsibility over to the next level in the chain. It's a fraudulent scheme, simply. And that is what it is. It is a fraud. It's set up as a fraud. Whether the intentions were good or bad, it's a system that works as a fraud. So, what do we need instead? We need bio-based delivery chains, where quality management revisions are carried out in the Nordic radiation protection authorities, where reviews are based on bioscience. We need a moratorium. We need an emergency plan. We need to build competence within the radiation protection authorities to revise the law and set new limits. And of course, better information. We have seen this pattern before, both in as scam and as obsolete knowledge, and it can be managed. Thank you.
Tak så meget. Einar Flydal, seniorrådgiver ved Telenor og adjunkt ved Norsk Universitet for Naturfag og Teknologi. Så det er selvfølgelig en mand, der ved en masse. Selvom det her i Danmark, når vi spørger nogen, siger, om det er bare sådan nogle self-made eksperter. Det er helt utroligt, at man ikke kan lytte til dem, der ved noget.